guest speaker today is Matthew Wright. I feel like I'm your mum calling you Matthew Wright. Is it Matt? Who is a really very talented copywriter. And there's a lot more to copywriting than just writing words, isn't there, Matt? So most of you will have got the three things to consider before today, but there were one or two late subscribers this morning that may not have got it. So you might need to just remind people of what you were asking them to think about, Matt, before the meeting, which was really about when did you last write some copy, wasn't it? Where did you put it, and how did you think people were going to see it? I think that was right. Over to you, Matt. Anyway, do you want to share your screen? You can if you wish. It's enabled.
There we go.
Lovely,
right.
Thank you.
Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Hopefully, well, I'm in the corner now as well. Right, so the brief I was given by Karen, and thank you, Karen, for inviting me, was to help people write content for their business. So I'm going to stick with that because I think there's quite a few marketing type professionals in the room here. So it's like judged by your peers almost. So it should be quite a lively Q&A afterwards. As I said, I come from an accounting background, so I think that's kind of where I completely agree with Karen, the structure and the planning. And then the writing on top is often maybe a comparatively smaller part. So if people aren't all that confident on their writing, I don't think they should be too worried, really. A lot of it is in the planning beforehand. So without further ado, let's just hope this will work. There we go. I thought this was quite a good motif actually to start with. Energy efficiency seems to be the order of the day. So I think it's time to think green and improve the energy efficiency of your writing. You know, there's no point writing on a scattergun approach, lots of different things. You can make one piece of writing do the work for a lot of your marketing content. So I think concentrate on doing one thing well and everything will flow from there. So just to reiterate, it starts with the planning, make your words work for you. And I would say, if in doubt, start with blogs. And that's what we're going to talk about in a second. So the blog, I would view the blog as the building block of your marketing content writing. You can upscale a blog into a longer piece. You can always write more. You could do people like white papers. You can do longer case studies, whatever. Or you can downscale it into snippets. Clip bits off for LinkedIn, for Twitter, for other social feeds. So I think the blog is the sort of Goldilocks of marketing as far as I'm concerned. It's not too long, not too short. And I would say start there if in doubt. Where do we go from with here? So in terms of upscaling it, obviously the website is a natural place to put your blog. It's actually great for SEO. I'm not a website designer myself, but I work with quite a few, and they all swear by blogs because it means that your content is updated. You're viewed as an expert by Google. So posting blogs is viewed as by far and away the best thing for SEO if you're not an SEO expert. I just sort of leave it at that. But obviously, once you've posted a blog, you've got a hyperlink and you can put that anywhere. You can put it in LinkedIn, you can put it in Twitter, whatever, and that drives traffic back to your website. I've tried to include a few examples here. Apologies because copy and pasting it into or taking clips into PowerPoint hasn't come across massively clearly. But anyway, this was one we did for, actually this was for Karen. So in a different presentation group that Karen's in there, cross-reference. And I would often, after we'd do a 12-minute presentation piece, write them up for the members. And just, again, I suppose if I look at this here, I like to start with the headline quote. It's quite a nice way of doing it that way. I tend to limit myself to 3 points. My view is that I know when I was in accountancy and analysis, anything more than 3 points often I wouldn't remember in a presentation. As I said, you can always make a blog longer, but I would say stick to 3 points, and it makes it easier to write as well. You know, I'd rather have a blog that was maybe 80% perfect and was actually written than the virtual blog, which was 100% perfect, but never actually got written. So that's just an example of, you know, putting something up onto a website, which provides a link, and going from there. Second thing, case studies. I would say case studies are probably the best bang for your marketing buck. I mean, discuss at the end. I don't know what other people think, but I think they're quite unique. Well, they're very unique. They're other people's views of you, and it's a great marketing piece which you can write using other people's words. This was one I did for my own website. And again, in terms of actual process here, have a format in advance. Again, there's nothing worse than having a blank piece of paper if you want to start writing. By all means, and this is just because if I didn't have a quick format, I probably wouldn't do it. But 2 boxes there, you know, your standing data there, client brief, background, brief, result. That's all you need at a very, very minimum. You can make it longer from here, but I think just getting the basics down is great. So that's a very simple one, which I wrote in Word and just put it onto my website. This was a posher PDF one I did for a client. But again, the genesis is the same. I've got 3 challenges, 3 solutions. Okay, this is done in InDesign, which I do, and it's a nice PDF and nice images and everything else there. But the essence of the case study is the same. Next one, newsletters. Newsletters I know can be a pain, you know, they can take a lot to write, but if you are a regular blog writer and you've written your blogs, it's great because the newsletter basically becomes just a simulation at the end of the month or the quarter or however long you actually send it out over. Great for client contact, low risk, high reward. So again, once you've actually got your hyperlink for your blog on your website, you can write a little teaser and then just drive the traffic back to that. This was an example I used to do for a company I was part of. So again, MailChimp, which I think most of us are familiar with, other applications are available. I'd have again a quote at the start just to attract attention, little editorial, and then underneath that, a little teaser with a link to the blog article itself back on the website. So actually that became quite a quick way of actually sending a newsletter out on a monthly basis as we did then. Moving downscale slightly to taking snippets off. Obviously LinkedIn I think probably is the most valuable business tool most of us use in social media world. It allows you to have conversations with your clients and with your peer group, and I think it's probably the best thing in establishing credibility. When I'm writing something, and this is I'm just sort of showing you how I would actually do things here. This was a press release I had to do for a client, and as I'm going through, I would just highlight the bits that I would then take out into either LinkedIn or Twitter. It could be a headline, you know, maybe for Twitter, which then sort of just gets your brain flowing. But I just find that having yellow for LinkedIn, green for Twitter, I can put something at the bottom there, which I can then take out. And of course, the people can use that on Hootsuite or however they want to actually put out their social media. But again, rather than going back and writing from scratch, you're repurposing what you're writing from the start. And social media, which again is snippets and teasers. I think that kind of keys into what we were doing before. So I probably wouldn't tend to try and write them from scratch. I would write them from something else, which was organically driven. But again, these all come from blogs. You know, the blog is the genesis, it's the building block of this, almost the DNA of marketing, if you like. So with that in mind, I was just going to take about 5 minutes and just go through how to write blogs more efficiently, or basically how I write them, or how I view writing them more efficiently, because I think it's all very well saying write a blog, but then people say, well, where do I start? What do I look for? So without further ado, I think the headline, start with the headline. And I quite like think like a reporter. This was just a few that I kind of collated here. But if you remember, I mean, people can often remember adverts from their younger days. And again, adverts, brilliant because they've got, you know, they've got slogans, they've got images, they've often got music and jingles. It's almost the perfect DNA, I would say. You know, if you can remember the Smash advert from 30 years ago, or, you know, Kit Kat, or all these marketing slogans, that's the DNA of actually, you know, of writing, of attracting you in, which is, I think, what, I'm not saying we will aim to do that, but it's useful to remember where it comes from. Maybe some of the more down-market tabloid newspapers had the better headlines because they were trying to actually, encourage people to open the page and to write them in. I mean, Sunday Sport had some classics when it was in its day. Not all of them mainstream, but I just think it's quite interesting to look at the language they use and just, use it for inspiration. We're surrounded by clickbait now on the internet, which may be at the lower end, but how often have you clicked on it wanting to actually sort of click through onto something? So again, this was just some examples. This was something that caught my eye. It was a few years ago, actually. Did Greece have a madman strategy? It was for a very, very dry technical piece on the Greek negotiating position in the EU. But I think, rather than starting with something very, very dry, start with something which is emotive, a madman strategy, put an image next to it. And then suddenly you're thinking like, well, what's this about? So yeah, I think that's a great way to actually start doing things, having a good title or hook, and then have the introductory summary established in the argument to be discussed beneath that. Second point with blog writing, be topical. And this is, I think, great for planning. So if I'm doing blogs for a client, I would encourage them to have a 90-day marketing plan. 90 days, because I find it's long enough to kind of look into the future, but it's not too long. If you say a year-long one, it's often too long. A month is too short. And with 90 days, you tend to stack up a few blogs in advance. So if they're particularly busy one month or firefighting, whatever, you can just switch things around. This really depends upon your business. How does your business work? Is it calendar driven? Is it to do with holiday letting or whatever, in which case time of year might be more appropriate. So Easter, Queen's Platinum, Jubilee, summer holidays. Sporting related, when a big sports event is on, that could be a hook for your blog. Weather related, of course, which I suppose we're surrounded with in the UK. Politically related. So, depending on your business, you could almost sketch out from, let's say, from January to December, sort of key events, could be conference based or whatever, which just then provide a hook for your blog going forwards, which means that the best thing is you can actually pre-write most of your blog. And again, what I'm trying to avoid here is looking at a blank piece of paper, because if you look at a blank piece of paper, chances are you won't write anything. It's that first nudge to get going. So having a bit of a calendar, maybe in the background, I always find is quite a useful way. And it also gets clients thinking as well, because suddenly, it's apprenticeship week in February. What are we doing for that? And it enables you just to get the marketing going that bit earlier. Start with a bang. The classic inverted pyramid. I think probably when we were taught at school, it was introduction, build up, eventually conclusion. Modern day isn't like that really anymore. You have to start, as I said, get the attention earlier on, be punchy and concise. Remember, think like a reporter. I always think the 5 W's, and I call it the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Absolutely vital. I would often actually write those down on a piece of paper, just as a sketch, just to make sure I've covered those as well, because it's amazing how often you can actually miss something out, especially if it's a topic you know quite well. And again, it's an easy thing to write out. Just have them in the side, and it gives you. It starts the brain flowing. It gets you thinking as well. Remember your angles, or I would say, this is really your why. Your audience. This is what you're saying here. Why should your audience read what you've got to say? So it could be topical. It could be a unique viewpoint. It could be a call to action. But again, think from your audience's point of view. So, in summary, 3 points. I think it all starts with the title. The title is what will actually draw somebody in. Use emotive languages, ask questions, be provocative. Numbers are good, the 5 best marketing tricks, because then people know you've almost frame referenced exactly what you're going to be talking about, so they won't be disappointed. They know exactly what they're going to be getting. Just be sure that you give it to them. It's not an essay. Bullet points are fine. Images are great. Video is fantastic as well. Don't be afraid of white space as well. I see people try and crunch up blogs into a really short space. Don't be afraid of white space. You know, give the eye time to roam as well. And don't overstuff your blog. I tend to work on the rule of 3 as well. I think remember your exam technique here. You know, answer the question. Except this time you're asking the question which you want the client, which you then need to answer. So have the question, write down what you're saying at the start of your piece so you do stay on track. It's amazing how often people can just start writing and then by the end of it, they're saying something completely different to what they started off at. So having what your question is that you're asking at the top, along with the 5 W's, I always find is a great way of actually keeping on track. And then the rule of 3, you know, I would say if you got three good points, you know, I would often stop there. Depends on the piece often, but yeah, if you've got 3 good points, I think that's enough for most audiences.